I will take this video down if anything of what I say is proved wrong. I know whatever I'm going to say in this video is right, even if people don't want to see it. And truth has a way of finding through everything, because truth is what stands when all the falsities fall away. I have myself been a follower of Sadhguru for 7 years, and I had posted a video about why I left Sadhguru after 7 years. But I also see a lot of people who follow the Isha Foundation and not even want to see some of the realities of it. I wanted to make this video because I wanted people who follow Sadhguru and Isha, or who might be on the urge of following him, on the edge of going into that place, to rethink about this. I'm not against Sadhguru because I have myself been through that journey, but I also have an understanding of how things work at the Isha Foundation and how people are being misled with his words. And if you're someone who is already invested in Isha for a long time, this would really be very harshful for you to hear. And I know there'll be a lot of retaliation about it because the followers of Sadhguru are really strong. And I understand with all the capacities that that might happen, but I want the truth to be out there. I It is not just me who has experienced it. It is common in all of the followers of Sadhguru who have a mind of their own to think. Because what is being done there is people are emotionally manipulated in a lot of ways where they do not end up thinking for themselves. Firstly, I would like to point out that think of the first time you connected with Sadhguru. Um, I want to say it again that I'm not against what he's doing or how he is helping people at a certain level. But what I'm dead against is that what he calls spirituality and teaches people only helps us a certain level. And the problem here is it keeps the person addicted to the foundation, to Sadhguru himself. True spirituality has never been like this. It does not, it is not one man's truth. It's the truth that we human beings are after. That that is the ultimate. But when a person like this, who has so much of power, hooks people to the practices, to the foundation, to everything that comes out of Isha Foundation, and makes himself look like God, and allows this to happen in the foundation, that's dangerous. You may not even want to see it because you're already hailing that person as something that's like the ultimate form of human being. Yes, he has a very deep and very energetic aura around him. He has that command over energies, but there can't be any single person on the planet to tell you how to live for yourself, how to do each and everything, where you're manipulated for each and everything. And this is very hard to see for people who are already vulnerable, who are already at the low stage of their life, and they want something to come out of that, and then they find Sadhguru, and then they get invested into Isha Foundation, all the practices, or by his words, and then they can't think for themselves. This is a really worse scenario, if you ask me, where this is no more the cult that used to be there before. Now it has gone to a different level where the cult leader is running havoc in the world. And just think of the people who are in power, Just think of Trump, for example. He is a narcissist at that level, and he is the president of the United States for the second time. Now, think of this, how the mindset of people must be to elect such a person as the president. That's the amount of manipulation and the amount of strategies that people like that use to get the followers, to get the votes, or anything. And this is a very deep level of manipulation that's happening in the world. Now, here I'm focusing on spirituality because I have been on that path and I have followed this path with Sadhguru for 7 years. I have done the programs over there. I've lived in the ashram for a long time. So I can speak for this. I can't speak for Trump because I have not been there uh, as a citizen of the country. I am an Indian citizen and I can only talk about what happens here because I belong here. And as I see, the whole country is a religious country. If I have to speak as an outsider, if you look at India, the whole country is based on religion. A lot of religions. Hinduism being the main religion of the country, majority of it. Now, if you look at the teachings that were there before, Advaita Vedanta, which preached non duality, the teachings were focused on non duality. The teachings were focused on self inquiry, and Sadhguru knows this. But there's no money there. There's no money where a person can just sit with himself and ask these questions to himself, and that gives the power to that person. Even though now we are at a stage where people can't do this on their own, I would have really appreciated if someone with the power and the charisma of Sadhguru would have devised some, even though if it is a practice, would have devised a practice where the spiritual seeker does not become dependent on the guru if he if he wanted to continue calling himself that. And if you're calling someone a guru, he's already on the higher plateau from you. So you're already inferior than that person. This will never allow you to be free because you're always looking at another person as an authority, and there is no authority in life. People make themselves an authority because they want to be superior to other people. There are a lot of points to discuss here, and I've written down a lot of things which I really think as an insider of Isha Foundation, even though I've not volunteered at Isha Foundation, and I'm glad I didn't, because once you volunteer, you get a kick out of doing service to people, and it's really wonderful thing to be of service to humanity. There's no doubt about it. But if it does not let you be free, if it becomes an addiction where you don't have a choice of leaving that place, where you are emotionally manipulated to a point where it feels as if it's a brainwashing, where you want to be isolated from your own family members, where you lose a sense of identity in the world and you can't go back to the world and work, where you end up giving everything you have to the foundation in the name of Sadhguru. That's brutal. I'm going to talk about a few things that I really don't think anybody who has followed Sadhguru has spoken about it before. Because there comes a sense of attachment with the Guru itself. And I really got out of it in a snap in the New Year's Eve of 2024 in the satsang with Sadhguru, where I saw, as I mentioned in the last video, where I saw that there's been a lot of manipulation of what goes to the public and how things are done even in the center itself. And today in this video, I'll be talking about really um, very controversial things which people at Isha or Sadhguru or anybody who follows him would not want to hear. And I do not know if anybody has ever told this, but I honestly feel that I was lucky enough to get out of a cult. Yes, Isha Foundation has all the characteristics of being a cult, and Sadhguru is its cult leader. As hard as it is for me to say that, having followed him for 7 years, he is a man who could have done things differently, who could have really, really awakened a lot of people in the world. But he chose a way where there are a lot of followers who do not want to be free, but he chose a path where there are followers who would follow him like God and would do anything that he says. Now, that's not freedom, that's slavery. I'm going to talk about a few things, few points that I really feel strongly to share with the world and to the people who follow Isha Foundation. And this is sort of a warning to people who are at the Isha Foundation, whether you're volunteering, whether you're a full-time or a part-time volunteer, it doesn't matter. Whether you have done programs, you've not done programs, whether you just listen to Sadhguru on YouTube, you have never met him, it really doesn't matter. What really matters is that you think for yourself, because that's one thing that's taken away from you at Isha Foundation. And I had also given my own way of living to Isha Foundation while I followed Sadhguru. Please think about this. Once you started following Sadhguru, the mind starts copying the way he talks, the way he looks, the way he dresses, the way he wants to do things. What about you? Have you ever thought about yourself? You can't, because you have been manipulated to a level where you can't think for yourself. First, let me talk about the emotional manipulation. And if you really ask me, this is at the core of what Sadhguru has been doing. He, as I said, he could have taken it to a complete different level. And in one of his videos, he has mentioned about going on this road and not the road that Krishnamurti took, where he did not charge a single rupee for his teachings. Because the reason that Sadhguru gives is that he wanted a lot of people, a majority of people, billions of people, to at least experience a little bit of meditation. Now, if enlightenment happened to Sadhguru when he was not meditating, how is it different for you? That's the question you have to ask yourself. If something that happened to him in an instant, it could happen to you also. How does it matter what he did before that? All you have to have is the right kind of perception about what life is. And that will come only when you are truthful to yourself about yourself. Everything, A to Z, nothing spared. Emotional manipulation. I have been to his satsangs. I have attended his Guru Purnimas. His a lot of functions where he talks about that in between those talks, right? He talks about that he won't be there for a long time, and I have seen that this has been a constant. It's like a emotional blackmail where he first gets the hook of the people, the spiritual seekers, and then he tells them that he will not be there for long. It's as if it's a replacement of a family member where you don't want them to die, and you put that as an authority spiritually, which goes even deeper. That's lethal. Now, there's a trap about you would do anything for that guy because you have been emotionally manipulated to the level of the mind. That's something. And the aspect of don't share anything outside. That's one more thing. In all the programs that I have been in inner engineering. I have done Shunya, I have done Bhavaspandana. These three, I did not go for Samyama. Thankfully, I did not. In all the three practices the programs that I was there, the common thing was do not talk about this outside. That really sounded very. Um it was very doubtful for me as to why this is. If spirituality is something that's supposed to be there for everybody, then why not talk about this? It's really something to ponder about because spirituality is not something that is a secret. And in Bhavaspandana, there were non-disclosures about all that is being done is because the participant has is willing to participate in the program. Bhavaspandana is about the senses, where a person is stretched beyond his baseline of sensory perception, where there are meditations that goes beyond um, anything that a person would have experienced, and people come out of it. Even I came out of it thinking that that was really something. But later on, once you see what the reality of that was, it is more of a kind of a hypnosis at a very, it is a very condensed hypnosis where a group of people are hypnotized sensorily to experience some things, and then you come out of it feeling all serene and peaceful because you never had those experiences. The same happens when you go to a new place. What happens is your senses have not been in that place, you have not seen that place, you have not explored that place before, and your senses smell, taste different food, listen to different sound, see different people, see different places around, and it really feels great. What meditation does is it gives you it, and a lot of people will not understand this, that meditation is not something to be done in for 20 minutes a day, in the morning and in the evening. Meditation is something that is a natural process that's supposed to go on 24/7, whether you're awake or asleep. Now, getting people hooked to sensory experiences and making them keep coming back to Isha Foundation to have those experiences, to be in that space, so called consecrated space, which is really built with all the aesthetics in mind, so that people come there and feel as if they have come to a different world altogether. Same happens if you go to the airport. Have you seen how clean it is? Because it has been maintained like that, where you won't even feel like throwing things anywhere apart from the dustbin. This is all sensory, it is all of the mind. But Sadhguru knows this, and he knows how to make people have experiences. And to go beyond the mind, it can't be an experience because experience is something that's accumulated, it's knowledge. And if you keep having newer experiences, when you close your eyes, you do those 20 minutes of meditations, you do those yoga, it is beneficial for the body, but the mind is being repeated with it. What it does is it keeps you in the loop of the mind itself, and you're not free of it. You can never be free of it because you're repeating. Anything that is repeating cannot free you. Thinking, imagination, and whatever you imagination do when you're doing Shambhavi Mahabhutra or Shunya, it is all the activity of the mind. Please see this. And Sadhguru knows this. So that's why he never talks about why. Why? He always talks about how to do things, because that's when a guru comes into the picture telling you how to live your life. If you think about it, at Isha, right, you have been told how to sit, how to do yoga, and how to drink water, how to get married, how to sleep, which position to sleep, what to say before and after sleeping, what to eat, what to wear. Do you just a few examples? Do you see how you have been manipulated, and controlled. This is at the severe level. Not even government does this. And this is at the spiritual level. My goodness, the I had doubts about these things, but even though, but I kept following because I did not want to. How do you put it? I did not want to think bad about Sadhguru, because that's what happens when he has given you that foundation to stand upon, right? Foundation of hope. And hope is a very dangerous thing when it comes to these kind of practices or people, because they give you hope and they suck you in. Sorry to be so blunt, but it's literally like you're sucked into a cult, and that's what cult do. There have been a number of examples in the history if you go back and look as to what a cult is, and it always ends badly. Always badly. They may continue after the leader is gone, but my goodness, the impact it has on people, many will not even realize even if they die. Many are ready to give their life also for the group leader, and they won't ever realize this. When I think about it, I really get goosebumps because people are just brainwashed into it. Imagine you have your own mind, you have your goddamn mind to think about things, and you have been taken, that has been taken from you very, very subtly, where you don't even want to, or you can't even realize that it's been taken from you. I'm not doing this to gain a following. I don't care if you follow me or if you hit on the subscribe button. I really don't care, man. What I really care is that you think for yourself, because that is something that is taken away by people who you give authority to for your own life. Be it religious people, be it your parents, be it your bosses, be it God, so called God, who tells you what to do, how to live. The mind, when it is stable, it just knows what is right and what is wrong. And when you identify yourself with a person like this, you cannot think for yourself. That's why you feel so unstable. And one of the practices of Shunya, where I know this is a very controversial thing to say, where you're told not to say that one word out loud. And I did it. The way people looked at me after, the way they shushed me was as if I killed somebody. My goodness, that was one of the moments of reflection for me, where, for example, if something as precious that is uh, that is Om, if that is told so publicly that we have known uh, for generations, that is practice in meditation, if that's a word that can be said publicly out loud, what's the point? Please think about this. What's the point of keeping that one word to yourself when you're doing Shunya meditation? Now, I have also done Shunya meditation. I know it's a very psychological thing where that one word is made so precious for you, where it becomes a hook for you, because once you say that word, it takes you to a deeper state of meditation, right? That's what it does. But what you do not understand here is, once you say that word, it is only, you will only go to that silence only because you say that word. Is that true? Or you can just, in a snap, you can just be there. And that's what really happened to me a week after doing inner engineering practice of Shambhavi Mahamudra meditation. Just in a week, I realized that I don't need the practice. So I just did it for 21 days, and afterwards, I did not do it. I did not need it. So I was free of it. But most people continue doing it, and They think that's the only way, and even Sadhguru emphasizes that practices, because that becomes very rigorous. It becomes repetitive. It hooks you to Isha, it hooks you to Sadhguru, because that's the only way, right? There's no other way. Those practices are the only way for you. That's really nonsense, because the only way to go beyond the mind is you seeing the mind for what it is. Please get this. And you will see the mind for what it is only when you do not have any beliefs going on, any thought going on. When you just look at the mind for what it is doing, even when it is thinking, you just look at the mind. Only then you'll realize that it's something that you already have. There's no need of anybody telling you about it. When anybody tells you about it, then it becomes a teaching. Then you follow it. This is what people usually do. They follow it, they say the mantra, they do the meditations, and they just keep on doing it for their whole life, and they are not free of it. All of these things are of the mind. There are a lot of things about how people go about in spirituality, which is really very puts them in a very slavery position, and they don't even know it and feel new experiences, and they feel that they feel little peaceful, and that's enough for them. The reason I'm making this video is I'm not here to tell you what to do, who to follow, who not to follow, but I want you to please think for yourself and see what's right and what's wrong, and please see what people are doing to you. If you yourself want to go through that experience, through that journey, please, by all means, please go through all this and see for yourself is what I'm trying to say here is true or not. But when you're doing it, also have the mind of observing things as they are and not what you want to think they are. In BSP, people have imaginary experiences. That is itself an experience. But what they do not understand is that these sensory experiences is what they get addicted to, is what they get hooked to. And these are not extraordinary or something that's going to completely shift their perspective, because it's something that leads directly into their own mind again, because these are imaginary things that they see, and these are nothing to do with spirituality, to be very honest. It is just a new experience that you never had before, and that's why it makes you feel so good about it. Same happens when you eat a new food. Same happens when you go to a new place. The programs get you hooked to that kind of environment and make you keep coming back to Servisha. You end up losing your sense of identity to function in the real world. The next thing is about donation, right? I know it is a foundation where it depends on other people's donations. But imagine this: donating 3% of your salary, the 1%, I don't know how much it is now, 3% of your salary every month. Imagine millions of people doing this as gratitude to the Guru, and you become a victim of a grand, well programmed scam where you feel good donating your own money and won't even realize it that you are being scammed. And this is the name of God. Same things happen where you end up donating a lot of things to the. And why would God need money? Please think about it. If you're someone who's donating money to God, and I've seen this in religious places where the place become the temples become rich. But what makes you give that? Imagine millions of people doing this, and this has become kind of a business, and you can see it where people are charged a lot of money to get faster services at the temple of the god so that they can see God closely, the idol of it. I really don't get it. Why is it so difficult for people to see the reality of things? From what I understand is they're so much into the beliefs that they don't want to open the eyes and look at facts. Because facts is something that is staring right at you and you don't want to look at it. That's the reality of the world, where people just follow things very blindly. Next is you feel obliged to serve your life at Isha and become part-time or full-time volunteer. The volunteers are made use of like anything in the name of service, but they feel putting themselves to the extremes will make them grow spiritually. Now, is there growth spiritually? You grow as a person. What does it mean? What it means is your perception shifts. It doesn't mean there's a growth, that there's a gradual growth. And that's what Isha Foundation is built on, where you have a basic inner engineering first, and only then can you volunteer, right? And only then can you do Shunya or you can do Bhavaspandana. And only then can you go to Samyama. Now, please tell me, who decided this? Who gave a human an authority to decide that there's a growth in spirituality? First of all, we humans created the word spirituality, and now we are creating a business out of it. And now we even have people who like have multi layers of practices going on, and it's for a beginner, for a medial, for a person who's already into the foundation, and then you have the deepest so-called meditation of samyama. But what people don't understand is, even though there's a difference in depth to these programs, there's really no spiritual growth. You grow in your perspective, or to better way to put it is this: there's a shift in perspective. You don't grow spiritually. You see it as a growth, right? And this is a very crucial thing to understand. If you have never understood time, only then will you believe in growth spiritually. Because in spirituality, even if you see, I've not read any scriptures, but if you, I'm very sure there is something about time mentioned on it. Because if a person talks about growth and does not talk much about psychological time, how we perceive things, that's a sure short way of manipulation, where a person says that you grow spiritually, but if the spiritual seeker thinks of growth, that he will go from here to here to here and only then reach somewhere else, that only then he will have awakening, only then he will have enlightenment. That is a deception of the understanding of time itself. Because growth in involves time. It includes a time psychologically. But having had that experience in Sri Lanka last year, and it's not even experience, the word, the, the good enough word for this would be an insight. When you have that insight, which I had in Sri Lanka last year, and this was when I was not doing anything, I was just looking at a tree and it just happened to me. It might as well happen to you. All it needs is the right state of perception for you of your own truth, of time, to be very honest, because there's no growth there. So, in that moment, when the awakening happens to a person, in that moment, time dies for that person. There's no time there. But if you've never been told about time and you've always been told that you have to go through steps and stages to have that awakening, that's just deception. plain deception, because enlightenment is not something that happens with practice. It cannot happen with kriyas and meditation. It happens when you see the mind for what it is, and when you keep doing this for a long period of time, the mind itself merges with reality of oneness, of non duality, which is the essence of existence. Now, when you have been told over and over and over again that there's a gradual increase in your spiritual progress, and you keep seeking validation of how to do the kriyas, how to sit, how to do this posture, your focus is completely on those stuff. And there are n number of things that have been told at Isha Foundation when you're taught all these practices. I've been there. I've been through the centers in Bangalore. I've been through the Isha Coimbatore ashram. I know how all this function. You have been told each and every step how to do it. When you have been told how to do each and every step, where is your own independent perspective? Please tell me that. When you are giving your own life's authority to in the hands of somebody else's methods, be it anybody. But here we are talking about a guru. If when you're giving your full authority of your life to a guru, then you don't have it yourself. You're following somebody else's path. Please understand this. There's no path when it comes to spirituality. There is only shift in perceptions. And if somebody tells you there's a path, they are really bluntly denying you the core aspect of spirituality. There's no path into spirituality. There's only understanding of what things are, what the mind is. And once you have had that observation of the mind, over time it will just happen to you. But someone who just tells you that this is the way to go, this is the way to do things, you're being uh, very, with a very deceptive person. And Guru can never lead you to the truth because he will make sure you are stuck with meditation and practices, which is still an activity of the mind. How in the world can anything of the mind help you go beyond the mind? The problems have been created by the mind. And if somebody is giving you practices and kriyas to do it on a daily basis and keep coming back to the ashram, keep volunteering, those are systems, those are methods. It is nowhere, it is really not different than any other systems that is there in the world. It just keeps you stuck. You really may have new experiences, but you will never be free that way. Coming to the business, my goodness. Initially, I started following in 2018. I had been to the ashram in that year for Guru Purnima. There was no shop. There was no Isha Shopee, the shop that they have for clothes and all the brand accessories of Isha. And there was no the shop in front of it where they're selling all kinds of accessories. And there's not even that canteen there, where now they sell all things that people can eat. Even though it's vegetarian, but still, if it's all business there, to be very honest. And coming to business, and once spirituality takes a different way to a business where they're selling you things, please see that that is not the way. Because spirituality is not something that can be charged. Spirituality is something that's freely available. Sure, you might pay for the books, you might pay for um, the travel, sure, you may pay for the programs, but the essence of spirituality is that I really appreciate what Krishnamurti did here. He never charged a single rupee for it. He never took 1 rupee for all these teachings, no matter how many people came. And there are a lot of things when it comes to this, but you are being emotionally manipulated to buy all those things. It's no different than consumerism in the real world. It is the only difference is that here you're doing it in the name of spirituality. That's the only difference here. Clothes, accessories, the shawl that Sadhguru uses, the programs, the upgrading of the programs to something different so that people can have new experiences, right? Why not? And oh, Sadhguru exclusive. My goodness, that where you will get more stories to get even more hooked to Sadhguru by paying monthly or yearly subscription, with which is the same business model of Netflix. Why in the world would a person who wants you to be free wants you to keep having new stories about him? This is a classic sign of a cult where you're not ever allowed to be free of the leader, where you're always being um, bombarded with a lot of information about the guru himself. And this is what happens in a cult. And you pay for this subscription and you get even more insights which are not publicly available, and it keeps you in that loop of stories. Gurus and all the cult leaders are basically really good in storytelling. And if you see the world right now, especially in the digital world, people who are good storytellers are the ones who are like up there in making money in the name of business. Storytelling is what keeps you also in the loop because that's what that's what has worked to hook people. That's what sales is about. It's storytelling. Marketing is about storytelling. If there's a good marketing for a product, if there's a good storytelling for a product, and it's going to sell because there's a really subtle storytelling to it, which hooks people thinking that they want it. And they even have a marriage service, and that costs about 2 lakh rupees the last time I checked. And there are trips to Kailash where if you want to do it with Sadhguru, you're charged 40 to 50 lakhs per person. That's cheap, right? It again becomes like a trip, even though he talks about not taking it as a trip, but you're really going on a trip to have new experiences and you're paying for exclusivity with the person who does not call himself God but acts like a God. How in the world is that not deception? And their water bottles, the organic food, there's a Isha Shopee for all these things. There's there are temples that are being sold, the body and hair products. How is this not a business? How can you not see this as a fact? Where spirituality has been turned into something a business. This is I understand if you are really blind about things, but the reason I made this video is to make you aware of all the things that are really happening over there. And I have myself been a victim of it, and I would really not want anybody else to be a victim of it because there are better ways to do things. There's there's a more free way to live life where you don't have to listen to a person who is acting as an authority and doesn't call himself an authority, where a foundation is a cult but and has all the features of a cult, but people look at it as something spiritual and something godly because it has been portrayed like that. Here Sadhguru becomes God in foundation. If you see the following that he has, it's no different than a celebrity. They in the I don't know if you have been in the ashram, you'll know it. If you've done the programs, you'll know this. And if you're listening this for the first time, please see how weird this is. They sell pictures of his feet so that people can worship it. His pictures, small or big, really like a big portrait of him of just him. Really big ones, even the small ones, the books with his pictures. How is this not propaganda of one person? How is this not Hitlerism at the level of spirituality, which is the deepest? And people cry looking at him. Now you may call it anything, but I really don't see anything that's spiritual in that. It's just their emotions. And if you don't understand emotions, then you're going to be sucked into these kind of cults, into these kind of leaders, into these kind of people where the manipulation is happening at the emotional level, which is what I started with. The emotional manipulation is the worst. The Nazis killed people physically. Now I'm saying this is worse than that because this is happening at the level of the mind, where a person doesn't even know that he is being played with. And how is a person who doesn't call himself a god, who acts like God and he allows his photos to be sold in the ashram that he controls? How is this not a replacement of idols of God in religion, of all the gods that we have in all the religions? How is this not a replacement of it? And how can you call this spirituality? It's a really a disaster, if you ask me. Once I started listening to Krishnamurti, this once I really left Sadhguru at the start of 2024, it really opened my eyes that I really was in a cult and I was in a shock about it for a week or so. And I really felt grateful that I had this kind of intellect that I could see what was happening there and I could get out of it because a lot of people cannot get out of it. See what happens once you're emotionally hooked to something, whether it is your family, whether it is a career, whether it is a person, whether it is with your partner, whether it is with a pet also. There's a kind of attachment there. And what Sadhguru does is he takes all this attachment, suppresses it, and he puts that attachment to himself. That's the great deception there. This is being done in a very subtle way, and you don't even realize this. I'm talking about this so brutally because this is a fact. And I know there's going to be a lot of harsh um, outbursts about it. People who really follow Sadhguru religiously, like God. But it's a fact that he plays at the level of the mind. He could have done things a very different way, but he's doing it in a very subtle way where people don't even realize that he's manipulating them emotionally. That's really a deep deception. I've never seen a deception at this level, on this scale, across continents, in all the countries, where a person just follows him and ends up looking like Sadhguru in his lifestyle, in the way he dresses, in the way he eats. Literally, it's a coping mechanism of the brain, and he knows this very well, and he has utilized this to the fullest, so that people get attached to him and leave everything. And the number one reason you find Sadhguru is when you're in a bad phase of life. You usually would have found him through YouTube. Then he offers you a place where your food, accommodation, bathing is given for free. You don't have to pay for the rent, for the food, which is the majority of a person who is earning a salary. Majority of their expenses is this: shelter and food. That's taken care of over there, and it's free. Only thing you pay for is the stuff that you want on a monthly basis if you're doing the long term, or the stuff that you want when you go for the programs, which is also available in their shop. All you have to do is wash your clothes and work for them and offer your time for free. That's it. You're called a volunteer, you're included in the group, you're treated as if one of them, and that's a great characteristic, a true characteristic of a cult. And storytelling, as I was mentioning about it before, storytelling is not spirituality. And if you just listen to Sadhguru, all he does is tell stories. I know he has depth. I have seen depth. I have gone into the depths of what he wants to convey to people. but his approach is really not the way. Storytelling, if you think of, if you just see, if you just see how the mind functions, it it repeats. And when there are stories going on about the same thing over and over and over again, it wants it. The story of movies, of new movies, the story of gods, the story of our history of humanity, the story of what happened to a person, stories of our own past, stories of our grief, stories of our happiness, stories of our experiences, stories of our own events in our life that changed everything for us, stories of any famous person. If you see, the storytelling is an art, but when it is used in a negative way, it becomes dangerous to you as an individual. And if you see, there is a certain level of creativity if a person is really great at storytelling. And that creativity, when you combine that with the deception, that becomes dangerous. And that's what Sadhguru has been doing. He's great at storytelling, and there are all people, majority of humanity wants stories because mind functions with stories. It functions with thoughts. It functions with the processes of thinking. Once you hook a person with stories which they want to hear in the face of their life, where they just want some hope, and it works at that level. But after that, when a person gets hooked to you and you give them more stories and you give them more practices, he cannot get out of your capture. Storytelling is really not spirituality. I know Sadhguru has immense command over his energies, but what he also does is confuse you with stories to a point where you stop thinking for yourself and only listen and follow what Isha and Sadhguru says. Living the lifestyle Sadhguru tells you to, as I mentioned, about controlling each and every aspect of your life, how to live, what to eat, and he may call it yoga, which in a deeper form is union. There's a real depth to it. But when you're being controlled and told in a very subtle way, and you don't know whether you're being controlled or you're being guided, and this is the confusion that he creates. Because at a certain level, he controls you, he ends up convincing you to do something which you would not have done otherwise. And in the other way, he confuses you with stories and tells you to do what he wants you to do. Now that's plain control on your face. And if you don't see this, you will fall into the capture of Isha Foundation. Coming to Adiyogi. Now I have also followed and done all the things that you have done. If you're a follower of Sadhguru, if you see religion of India, and if you have truly understood what people are hooked with, it's God. And spirituality is all about not finding God, but to be free of anything and everything. And to be in good terms with everybody, especially in the country where he is born. And to be good with all the governments that will come and go. Shiva was the most perfect statue to be built. Now, he may have his own thinking behind this. He may have his own ways of getting people into the foundation so that they at least experience some kind of peace by doing the meditation, by visiting the Adi Yogi. And now it's not only in Coimbatore. It has always also been established in US. It's been there established in Bangalore. It will be established in Delhi, I think. Last time I heard 2 years back. If you see, there is always with a cult, there is a hope of something coming, something new. that he is going to be there for you. And this becomes a replacement, really a replacement of parental perception of life, where you have attachment to your parents, to the guru, where you really truly will never understand death, but you will fear, not only fear, but you will not want him to be away from you. That's why you're always attached to your guru. The true freedom is in being free of your guru, is in being free of your own mind, and this freedom will not come with any kind of attachment. The addition of any activity of the mind is slavery. And just to reiterate the characteristics of a cult, number one point is charismatic leadership, authoritarian control, exclusive belief system, which it has, because that's the only way, right? Isolation from society, this happens big time over there. Manipulation and coercion, this also happens over there. Exploitation of members, volunteers are made to work like crazy over there. You would not believe the amount of work that's been told to do for volunteers. They've been stretched to their limits. And information control, where they're told not to talk about the programs outside because that will just erode their experiences who will come and do the programs. Group over individual. The individual's identity is just eroded like anything. Fear of leaving. This is a huge one. Where you will even fear, please see this, you will fear saying anything about Sadhguru, even asking anything against Sadhguru. You will fear talking your you about what you actually think, even if you have a doubt. You're suppressed like anything. You will fear all these things. And please tell me, how can you be free with fear? Fear is like the basis of attachment, because attachment is based on fear of death and the fear of losing a person. Fear itself is a thing about the mind itself. These are very subtle manipulations that is done. Next thing is high demand commitment. Don't you think you're committed to the Isha Foundation and you're being told to be committed to it? Deceptive recruitment, suppression of doubt or criticism. You cannot say anything against the practices. You cannot follow, you cannot do anything apart from the steps that are being told. You cannot criticize anything or ask about anything, and the only line that you'll get is, this has been planned and designed by Sadhguru himself. Only he knows. Even the teachers over at Isha Foundation will say the same line to you. Exclusivity, where only this place can give you freedom, awakening, or anything about spirituality, that this becomes the only place where you can go. Rituals and intense group bonding, you already know about it. Financial dependency, because when you become free of taking responsibility for yourself, you become dependent on the Isha Foundation for giving you food and for giving you the shelter. And you lose a sense of responsibility for yourself because now you become responsible for the whole world. And that's how you start volunteering, that's how you lose your sense of identity, that's how you end up giving all your money to Isha. And last I knew, I think they were building a building also, an apartment to be sold to people who want to live in the ashram for 20 to 30 lakhs. There's a studio, and you will stay there for the rest of your life. But once you die, you will not have that place, even though you're paid for it. This is like extreme scam if you really think about it. Sure, it gives you a very aesthetic space around to live peacefully, but this is not freedom. Please get this. And divine mission, it's all about reaching the highest level, about enlightenment. But To reach enlightenment, you have to go through the stages. There is no sense of questioning that you can do. You just have to follow, right? You just have to follow whatever is being told to you. And that's the great deception there, where you can't question. And if you can't question, you cannot think for yourself. Please get this. And there's secrecy and hidden agendas. The secrecy of what happens and how it happens in the ashram. You cannot talk about with other people on the outside. You cannot talk about it with family people because they will not understand you. You have been made to feel as if nobody will understand you except Isha Foundation and Sadhguru. And that's the kind of isolation that they put you on. Reprogramming, aka brainwashing. I remember Bhavaspandana, where they make us sign these non disclosures, where you have been told that you are willingly doing this, where the foundation is not responsible for any extreme thing that happens to you, and this is just a part of the program, where you are completely responsible and you are participating in it whole with your whole consent, and you sign it. So what happens is when you participate in these programs, and because I have been inside that, because I have participated in these programs and I have come out of it, I can talk about it now confidently and tell you that it is a kind of rewiring your brain to hook you to the mind itself. And they hook you to the mind in a way where you become hooked to the foundation itself and to Sadhguru. Because then you can serve Isha Foundation for the rest of your life, even when Sadhguru is not there. And this is a very dangerous thing. This is a classic trait of a cult. And ex-member stigmatization, where if a person, I have left following Sadhguru. Now the people who would talk about me, they will be like completely talking against me, and they would talk in the same way about anybody who has left following Sadhguru has started following somebody else because they don't like it. Because this is the only way, right? This is the only way to the truth. And there's no other way. There's no other way because they don't want other people to think for themselves. There's no need of self inquiry, right? Because it is not your mind. They end up controlling your mind, and you just give it to them on a platter. And use of fear of threat. Fear is something where that can be used against you because it is everybody's weakness, to be honest. And when a person knows this kind of deception, they can really make use of your weakness against yourself. They will not make you aware of a weakness. Please understand this. A person who makes you aware of your own weakness will make you strong without depending on anybody. That's true freedom. Now, coming to the characteristics of a cult. Now, I listed all the points. Now, I'll go into it a little bit deeper. Charismatic leadership, a central figure often seen as infallible, enlightened, or divinely inspired. The leader demands absolute loyalty and discourages questioning their authority. They may claim special knowledge, powers, or a unique mission. Authoritarian control. The group exerts strict control over members' thoughts, behaviors, and decisions. Leaders dictate personal choices such as relationships, diet, clothing, or career paths. Man, this is like completely next level of. I really never thought that I would be a part of this, even though I got sucked into it. But now that I see it, it is like a really full blown control on masses of people. This is like a deeper level of Nazis. Why don't people see this and why is this propagated? I really don't understand. And dissent or criticism is punished, often through shaming or expulsion. This is there. Dogmatic belief system. The group adheres to a rigid, unquestionable ideology or doctrine, often presented as the ultimate truth. This belief system is exclusive, dismissing or demonizing outside perspectives, because then you lose a sense of identity. Members are encouraged to view the group as superior to others. Isolation from society. Members are encouraged or required to cut ties with family, friends, or the outside world. Now, this is not told to your face, but it is being rewired into your brain very, very subtly. You will not know it. You will not know it because when the attachment is taken away from your family members in terms of the talks, in terms of the books, and you are being pushed into something greater than yourself. Yes, there's a truth that's greater than yourself, but when you're pushed by influencing you in a bad way, you are by default taken away from what you have been attached to in terms of family or your friends or your career, and you've been taken to a different place where you're now attached to something who's authoritarian. And because now you're attached to the guru, you will you will feel bad if you don't do any service to the guru. And now the family and parents and partners or career does not matter anymore after for that. Now this becomes very important because now it's your guru. It's the highest level of attachment. The worst. The group creates an us versus them mentality, portraying outsiders as dangerous or unenlightened. Physical or psychological isolation. Restricted communication may be enforced, which happens when you're doing the programs. Manipulation and coercion. Use of psychological tactics like guilt, fear, or shame to control members. Peer pressure or group dynamics reinforce compliance because everybody talks in the same wavelength there. It is as if people are brainwashed to say the same things because there's certain things they have to say, they just stick to it. Members may be coerced into donating money, of course, Ishanga, labor, volunteers, or personal assets to the group. They really go beyond and above all the things that a cult can do, and they literally, in the name of being in part of the cult, they ask other cult members to donate whatever they have just for that particular participation. It's like begging, but in a very nicer way, and people don't even feel like that they have been stolen from, but they are made to feel as if they are offering, and that's a great deception again, where you are manipulated at all levels. Exploitation of members. Financial exploitation, such as requiring large donations or signing over assets. Now, he talks about not a lot of people, not all the people have to come to the foundation. Now, why is this? If you want, you have to be part of the cult, right? This is because if you don't end up working outside, where is the foundation going to get money from? You have to be a rich person, and if there are just say 1,000 like this, and you're like really rich, and you really follow Sadhguru like anything, and you donate 3% or maybe more, that's enough. That's a huge donation. Next is the emotional or physical exploitation, including long hours of unpaid labor or sexual abuse. Now, I'm not sure about the sexual abuse, but I've seen about the unpaid labor. Man, the amount of work that's done for free, the physical, even the labors here would not do such kind of labors. Members' personal goals or well being are often sacrificed for the group's agenda. I don't have to speak more about this because people who are following the Isha Foundation and Sadhguru, they know for themselves that they end up just forgetting about whatever goals they had for themselves or in their life. Information control. The group restricts access to outside information. Leaders control what members can read, watch, or discuss. Internal propaganda reinforces the group's narrative. Group over individual. Individual identity is suppressed in favor of group identity. Personal goals, desires, or critical thinking are discouraged if they conflict with the group's objectives, which is always the case. Members may be required to conform to strict behavioral norms or dress codes. Fear of leaving. Now, this is a big one. Members are warned of dire consequences for leaving, and I'm sure this very much happens. The group may instill fear of the outside world or claim members cannot survive without it. Ex members are often shunned or demonized. Now, the fear of leaving here is really, really subtle, where you, even if you want to follow somebody else, you feel that kind of obligation to not leave Sadhguru or the Isha Foundation because they have offered you something. And the fear of just listening to another person to tell you how to live, the fear is at that level. Please see this in yourself. High demand commitment. Members are expected to devote excessive time, energy, and resources to the group. Personal boundaries are eroded, with constant demands for participation in group activities or rituals. Members may be pressured to recruit others, or they would be. It's similar to a company, right? Where you're wanting others to follow Isha, and you want people for the work to be done because there are a lot of projects that happens at Isha on a bigger scale, and members are really pressured, and I've seen this. Deceptive recruitment. The group may use love bombing, excessive affection or attention to attract new members. Now, if you see when you're doing inner engineering, when you have these kind of participants who are at the gate welcoming you with their hands folded, and all the people in during your inner engineering experience are just continuously with their smiling face. Now, how is that possible? Because you have been told to be that way, you have been forced to do that way. The volunteers are being told to do that way, and they may have a lot of reasons for it. But please see that you cannot be at the same state of emotion all the time. That means you're stagnant. That means you're not feeling your emotions. That means you've been misled into seeing what emotions are. That means you've been led to just see that there's only joy in life, that there's no sadness in it. You're not, you're just led to an extreme that there's only joy, happiness, peace, enlightenment. But what about the dark side of humanity, of the mind, where there is a lot of darkness that we humans have? There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of insane traumas that we have. And this is one thing where he never talks about traumas. Never. Please, this is, I'm going to do another video about the traumas itself. And the spirituality does not talk about traumas or psychology, and the psychology doesn't talk about spirituality. But we as individuals, we as human beings need both of this. We need a perception of the truth to live life deeply, and we need an understanding of the mind. That's why we need psychology and spirituality, but they need to be in a balanced way. Next is the initial teachings or goals may be vague or misinterpreted to lure people in, which is what inner engineering is. It's it's the basis of Isha's programs, where it's been stated as the entry level program, and people are lured into it, saying that this is required if you want to come on a trip with Sadhguru, if you want to go for higher programs, if you want to volunteer in the ashram, if you want to live in the ashram. This is a big red flag. The true nature of the group's demands is revealed only after deeper involvement. That's why when you see a lot of people, like for myself, who have been involved with the foundation for a long time, then we will see that there's a lot of deception that's happening on a lot of levels. And it's only when you've gone through the higher stage that you'll realize that there's something off here. Please see that the doubt is a very good thing. That means you still have the ability to question yourself as to if this is the right choice, if you're in the right direction. And this is the next point where you have been told to suppress your doubts or criticisms. Questioning the leader is discouraged or punished. My goodness. If you just say anything against Sadhguru, you're like, it's as if you kill somebody. This is really against anything that has to do with freedom. Members are taught to suppress doubts and attribute them to personal failures. If you're not doing your practices correctly, I don't want to get into this where you have been controlled each and every step. Critical thinking is framed as dangerous because you are not being told to believe in yourself about how your own mind functions, where you lose your own sense of thinking. And when you lose your own sense of thinking, this is very similar to terrorism, where the people are brainwashed into thinking that they're doing something good for the greater God. And here it's not about terrorism, but this is about a very deeper spiritual core that is being shaped in you without your own, um, without you yourself knowing that it is happening to you. That means you have been influenced. That means it's not happening consciously. That means you have been unconsciously influenced. That's why thinking about things is really important. Thinking about um, what is the right thing that is happening in your life, thinking about your situations in life, thinking about what is right, what is not wrong is really important in life. And when that the sense of thinking is taken away from you, that's the last resort you have about being in touch with yourself. After that, there's only one way. That's the way of the guru. Elitism or exclusivity. The group claims to have a unique purpose, mission, or knowledge that sets it apart from the rest of society. That only Isha Foundation knows about yoga, and nobody else can do it the way they do, because that's the only way to the truth, right? Members are made to feel special or chosen, fostering a sense of superiority. Outsiders are often viewed as inferior or lost. Rituals and intense group bonding. The group uses repetitive rituals, confessions, or intense group activities to reinforce loyalty. These practices create emotional dependency and strengthen group cohesion. Shared experiences, extreme fasting, chanting, or initiations, and even consecrations deepen this commitment between the group. Financial dependency. Members may become financially dependent on the group, either through donating their wealth or being cut off from external income sources. The group may control members' finances or require them to live communally with shared resources, which is what happens at Isha. Utopian promises. The group often promotes a grand narrative, such as a divine mission. Members are told they play a critical role in this vision, increasing their sense of purpose and loyalty. Now, here what happens is you have been given a purpose of spreading spirituality. Now, you think you are a part of a greater good. Now, it's putting off a purpose that you had for yourself, some goal that you had for yourself. Now it's gone. Fear of missing out on the promised future keeps members engaged. And this is being said over and over again, where it's made to look as if because of the programs that Sadhguru does, he's been made to look as if he will not be there for a long time, but he continues being there. Please think about this. Even I got into the lure of, okay, I'm supposed I should be doing samyama because this could be his last samyama. He may not be there after that because he's already spending a lot of his energy on all these consecrations. But what, how would it be if he's not there for samyama, right? He has to be there. Now, the fear of missing out on a promise of enlightenment, and when he says that when he leaves this life, that his presence would be felt, his grace would be felt by all the people who have done inner engineering. Now, how in the world is this possible? Only people who have done inner engineering, only people who have followed all these programs would feel connected with Sadhguru, right? That's one thing. Second thing is, if you don't know Sadhguru, how, if you've never heard of Sadhguru and never seen his picture, how would that impact if a person has done inner engineering or not? And his only main propaganda has always been about practicing, practice, 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 and don't leave practicing. And if you see and you know this, when you don't practice, you don't feel good because you've been told, you have been emotionally or manipulated into thinking that if you don't do the practice, you lose a sense of continuity in your spiritual growth. And this is very critical to understand, where the leader himself is telling you about practices, and the whole foundation obviously propagates the whole thing. But the leader knows the practice does not lead to the truth because it keeps you in the loop, and still he propagates this because when you do those practices, you're you have those experiences which is of the mind itself, and you keep doing those things and you've been told to do that forever. Now think of this: anything that is repetitive will make anything that's in the world tear away, it withers away. Anything that's repetitive, you look at CD, for example, you look at anything that's repetitive. For example, the sun is burning, it has its own cycle. So after millions of years later, it will burn out. Anything that's repetitive will burn out, has to burn out. Now we as humans, we have a short lifespan, and we have this physical brain. Now when you want, if you want to keep your brain fresh all the time, and you want peace of mind, which all the people are running behind, and especially if you're in the Isha Foundation and you're being told that the at the end of the tunnel there's enlightenment, that your awakening will happen to you if you're in the right state of receptivity. But what you do not understand here is that the repetition will never get you there. Repetition is something that is only going to erode you. And the most repetitive thing in your life is thinking. So, if you have been told stories over and over again, if you have been told to do the practice over and over again, what the mind does is the practices will become a repetition. Now you're dependent on those practices in those 20 minutes or 1 hour or how much ever long you're doing to have those experiences. Now it's a repetition. To have these experiences, you're going to do practices. And you have been told to do the practices, else you will be an outcast. Or you've been made to believe that if you don't do those practices, you are not growing spiritually. And this is just lame. This is not true spirituality. Secrecy and hidden agendas. The group's inner workings, finances, and true goals are hidden from members or outsiders. Higher levels of the group may have secret teachings or practices revealed only to loyal members. Transparency is avoided to maintain control. Use of fear and threats. Fear tactics such as threats of spiritual punishment, social isolation, or physical harm are used to maintain control. Members may fear supernatural consequences for disobedience. Leaders may use surveillance or informants to monitor members' behavior. Reprogramming or thought reform. Techniques like sleep deprivation, which is like the most um, intense thing that happens at Isha Foundation, repetitive chanting, or intense indoctrination are used to alter members' thinking. This is really a deception of the mind by using the mind itself. Members are taught to distrust their own judgment and rely on the group's ideology. Classic trait of a cult. This can lead to a loss of personal autonomy or critical thinking skills. Ex member stigmatization, which I would be done after this video is released. Former members are um, vilified, labeled as traitors, or blamed for the departure because they stop believing in Sadhguru, they stop following Sadhguru, they stop doing the practices right. Now they have become villains. The group may spread false narratives about ex members to discourage others from leaving. Contact with ex members is often forbidden. Now, all these points I told you has been the core characteristics of a cult. Now, if you see the history of humanity where cults have often been there, and these kind of what do you call it? These kind of groups, foundations, which only lead people to more and more attachments, will keep on coming you in the future. But right now we are in 2025, and I can see that this is one of the strongest cult that's out there. I'm sure there are many more, but because I can only speak about this because I've been through this. I've been through this and I've been free of it. And only because I stopped following Sadhguru that I could be free of the mind itself, that I could see what the mind itself is, that I could have the awakening when I was not following anybody. Now you may call it anything that you want, but that only comes from your own state of mind that you are at now. If you're following Sadhguru, all this makes no sense to you, and you will only come uh, and attack what is being said here. But if you're a true spiritual seeker, and this whole video is for that, that you understand what true spirituality is. True spirituality is not business. It's really not following anybody. It's just the understanding of what the mind is. In the understanding of the mind, you see what your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions really are, and not the contents of it. You actually see what your thoughts are. Your thought is really a sound. And to see that thought is a sound, you really need to slow down and observe the mind. That's the most important skill of a truly spiritual person who really wants to see the mind for what it is. And the mind has a lot of deceptions by itself in the first place. And if you're following a person like this, it goes into deeper deception, which is really, really hard to come out of. There are talks about his past life, there are talks about that he will not have any future life, and all this is an imagination and invention of the mind. Second, if you are a truly spiritual seeker, you would really try out different things. Sure, you try out this also if you want, but you would really experiment with life and see that in the end there is only a repetition of patterns. And you will see this only because you have a mind that is insightful and you have a mind that is uh, questioning itself, that mind that sees itself. Now, what do I mean by mind that sees itself? The mind that sees itself has the capacity of first seeing that the mind is no different from the person himself or herself. Now, initially it will start off as watching the thoughts. Once you watch the thoughts, you will come closer to who you are as a human being, who you are as an entity, who you are as a life itself. You will come closer to the truth of yourself. Now, this is not the whole truth because you will come closer to who you are only when you have truth in your life about what existence is, which is non-dual in nature, which is non-duality, which is which has no past or the future, where there is only the present, where there is only this moment always, and there's a flow to it. And when you come to understand that, the traumas that you had in your life has to be worked on, and they can be worked on only by observation of the mind. They cannot be worked on with meditation. That's why Sadhguru never ever talks about traumas, because he knows that meditation cannot heal a person from their childhood traumas. But he knows a lot of people come with traumas. Now he's leading them to a newer experience where they suppress their traumas, but the traumas never go away. That's why you're not able to overcome all those challenges that you have in your mind. You're not able to overcome dependency, you're not able to overcome attachment, you're not able to overcome sexual addiction, you're not able to overcome a lot of things that you really want to overcome and you know you have to overcome to live a balanced life. But because you're doing all these meditations, now it has taken you away from working on these traumas and it has taken to a different level of experiences where these will remain suppressed until you look at it, until you look that um, there is a sense of urgency to look at your own mind. The mind is a very complex phenomena, and if you give the authority to other people about how your own mind functions, you'll never be free of it. The mind and you are not different. But to observe the mind, you first have to see, because now you are in a place where you're habitually thinking. So you have to first see that the thought is just what's the thought. As it is happening, as it goes on, just what's the thought, and you'll see that as the thought goes on, it has a life of its own, and it has a pattern of its own, which you keep coming back to. And to observe the mind, you really need to have the sense of insight where you look at the mind and you get answers not based on thoughts, but you get insights based on perception, which is not an activity of the mind. I don't know if you have this in you, but I had it in me where I could just ask a question and the answer would just come. For example, if you really have to work on traumas, you really have to question yourself. And that sense of questioning is taken away from you because you're being decepted into not thinking for yourself. Now, to work on traumas, you really need to understand that trauma is something that has happened to you. First, you need to come to terms with that. And you need to come to terms with what you're you are as a person now, with all the patterns that you have and how you function as an individual. And all this is an activity of the mind, and all this will come out in relationships for you. That's why you never had a stable relationship. That's why you have been hooked to a place where you don't have to deal with all these struggles, because now all of this is taken care of, right? And you'll end up thinking as to you don't want anything else in life. This is more than sufficient for you. But the fact is that you need to be in the outside world and live your life. The whole idea of making this video is that you become free of anybody and anything that tells you how to live your life. Sure, you may make use of these teachings, you may go deeper into your life, but you should still have that quality to ask questions to yourself whether this is the right way for you, where you're not being corrupted with words of another person, where you're not being corrupted by experiences of another person. And for you to be free of all this, you really first need to see that you have, if you are a Isha follower, you have been a part of a cult for a long time. It's time to get out of it. Because for me, the awakening happened 11 months after I stopped following Sadhguru completely. I stopped following Sadhguru while I was at Isha Foundation itself. And 11 months later, when I was in Sri Lanka, the awakening happened. Now, this depth to this where the awakening just doesn't happen. It happens when you have understood time, where you understood psychological time, and all these things that have been done at Isha Foundation. These are just a result of time, because you're progressing in your spiritual growth where you're doing something, and only then you will reach enlightenment. That's a plain deception. There's no stages in spirituality. There's no stages to reach awakening, but there's a sense of understanding of what your mind is. And that understanding is not of knowledge. That understanding comes with perception and insights, and these have no activity of the mind, where the mind itself understands its own activities, where the mind itself sees what it is doing. And when you see the mind for what it is doing, you'll understand that the mind has a lot of tricks up its sleeves. But when you watch the mind for what it is, you'll slowly realize that the mind is not against you. It has always been for you. You just didn't have the capacity to observe it for what it is, and not what people told you to as to what the mind is. We have always been told n number of things since we were born in this world about what the mind is. Now, the way to freedom has to come from within you. Now, how would you do that? First, be free of people who tell you what to do, especially how, especially how to do things. And this freedom can come only when you see people for who they are. And you can see people for who they are only when you see your own mind for what it is. Because it's only by seeing your own reality that you can see the reality of other people. Now you're following such a person because, and you want Guru in your life, you want somebody else to tell you what to do in life only because you do not understand who you are, what your mind is. And it is only in the understanding of this mind that you can be free of other people's influences, that you will get a clear, short way of what and how to observe your own mind, and this how to observe your own mind will come from within you. Because if you just take this small example, small thing that you can do with yourself, if you just sit with yourself and you see what's happening in your mind, just see, just look, without any interpretation, without any your own beliefs coming into the picture, without your own experiences coming into the picture, just see it for what it is, without any words, without any thought, just look at it. And in that instant where you look at it and you keep looking at it over time, the mind will lose its hold on you. That's when the more identity you will lose with the mind, with all its attachments that is coming out of time, with all the beliefs that is coming out of the contents of it, the more you see the activities of the mind itself, of all its contents, the songs, the thoughts, the thinking, the words, the beliefs, the experiences, whether they're good or bad doesn't matter. But once you see things for what it is, that's when true spirituality begins. And that's when the real work happens, the real inner work. I have told what I personally believe is true about Sadhguru and Isha, even though he has a lot of intensity within him, he has that hold over people, and he could have done things in a very different way. And this is my personal experience about it, and this is my personal insight about it. You may not agree with what I'm saying, but I want you to look at your guru yourself. Please see whether he's leading you anywhere, and who gave him that authority to lead you anywhere. A person can just give you information, but the person cannot tell you how to live your life each and every moment. A person cannot have control over your mind to a level where you end up listening to that person and living as per that. So, the whole idea of the video was to make you aware of what is happening with you in your life, where you're giving control to another person, and maybe a lot of other people also in your own life. To be free, to be completely free, the mind has to see itself for what it is. and that will only come by pure observation. And if you can prove any of what I said to be false about Isha Foundation and Sadhguru, I will take this video down. But I know that anything that I've said and everything that I've said is true. And this is not coming from a sense of superiority, but this is coming from a sense of looking at Isha Foundation and Sadhguru for what it is and who he is. I have nothing against it. I am only for true spirituality, being to the truth. And there's nobody else who can lead you to the truth. It is all your inner work. If it if you have come with this mind, who is anybody to tell you how the mind functions? Even me, as someone you're watching, can only give you information about it. But the real inner work is you observing your own mind. That is the only thing that you have in your life is observation of your own mind. Only then can you see how the world today is, how deceptive people are, how everybody is doing it for money, and spirituality has just lost its essence. Be free of everything, but also see that there's a sense of responsibility to the human world that we live in, to the planet that we live in, and to be free of the mind itself, to see what it is the greatest freedom. Don't let anybody take that away from you. I have a sense of responsibility to share what true spirituality is because I have seen all the deceptions in the world. I have seen and I can see now all the deceptions in the world, and you are not able to because you have a blind belief about things where you let another person tell you how to live, where we are giving that sense of authority to another person to tell you how to look at your own mind. And the mind functions in such a way where there is no, for you to look at the mind, it does not need any system, it does not need any method, it does not need any yoga, it does not need any god, it does not need anything that is created and invented by humans, and god is an invention of the mind itself. To see the mind for what it is and to see the truth, all you need is observation and awareness of what the mind is doing to you on a moment to moment basis. That's all that you need. Now, this is the toughest thing to do for people nowadays in the modern world because all the technologies and all the stimulations that are out there have made the mind so numb and so in the loop of patterns that it has become nearly impossible for people to just observe the mind. But it is very much possible to observe the mind no matter where you are, and that's the only tool that you have. That's the only tool that you have to observe the mind itself. Your own perception, your own attention of the mind itself. As you sit there and listen to me, there's a voice going on in your head. In your head. What you am talking now right now, you're listening to it in the form of my sound in your mind. In the same way, there are other people's voice in your head, which you have been influenced by, and these come as flashbacks to you. Those are like a subtle invitation for you to do the inner work by observing those voices. And when you discover your own voice, that will happen only when you have eradicated every other people's influence in your mind. That's when the inner work begins, because then you are in sync with who you are as a person, and you can finally and honestly be brutal to yourself as to who you are, as to what the mind is doing, as to what all the patterns it has for you, how it functions in your life, why you have so many addictions, why you have ended up believing in a guru, why you wasted so many years on a path that led you nowhere. Sure, at a certain extent, these failures are important, but if you ask me, these failures can be stopped, these failures can be avoided if only you had the right information. I didn't have the right information in 2018. Now I feel that it's my responsibility to give you the right information about how things are, how the mind functions. I'm not anybody to tell you how the mind functions. That's your job. The only thing that I'm here to tell you is be aware of your own mind as to what it's doing and be in sync with your own truth.